Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. نويت تعلم وتعليم ذكر وتذكر ونفع عن اتباع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني وشب السوفي يدني وهب يغواني. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني وشب السوفي يدني وهب يغواني. اللهم إنا نسألك علم لدني وشب السوفي يدني وهب يغواني. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. ربنا واجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك. ربي هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. ربي هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. ربي هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. ربي اجعل هذا البلد آمنا واجنبني وبني أن نعبد الأصنام. ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذرية ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذرية ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا والمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذريتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما. ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذريتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما. ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذريتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما. ربي اوزعني ان اشكر نعمتك التي انعمت علي وعلى والدي وان اعمل صالحا ترضاه وادخلني برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. ربي اوزعني ان اشكر نعمتك التي انعمت علي وعلى والدي وان اعمل صالحا ترضاه واصلح لي في ذريتي اني تبت اليك واني من المسلمين. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. Mention your intentions for attending the class, inshallah. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. Alright, so we are the dhikr of Ramadan. Try to do it a lot in abundance and not just before buka. Right, throughout the day you should be doing the dhikr of Ramadan that we just did. So before class, after class, and every time in Tarim we do it after every prayer. After every prayer we do it after any prayer, in fact, after duha, after witr, after any prayer, or while waiting for someone whatsoever. The dhikr of Ramadan is always being said, and in fact they will aim to do a few thousand of it in the month of Ramadan. Right? So it's not just like something the dhikr, right? But throughout the month it should be done at every moment, inshallah. Right, so we are actually coming to the end of our book. Right, inshallah. Right, so we're going to finish off by speaking about, by warning against a few vices, a few sins, right, that you should be really, really harsh against. You know, if you find your child at the age of approaching puberty, so we're already approaching puberty. Right, so he is at the age, you would say, maybe past the age of 10. Right? So puberty can happen anywhere from the age of 9 right, up to the age of 15, right, for both boys and girls, the Shafi madhab. Right? So we are looking at the age of 10, 11, 12. Right? So these are the ages whereby they need to be firmed up in their religion. They need to know what are sins, they need to know and to know to stay away from these major sins. Right? So here, right, he says, and I will recite in Kitab سبل الأبيان شرح بلوغ للإخوان والمسلمين للإمام بسولان والإمام رملي والإمام غزال رضي الله عنهم جميعا ونفعنا به وبهم وبعلومهم في الدارين إلى أن قال ويحذره غاية التحذير من الكذب والفحش والفجور وسرقة والآكل الحرام فإنه من موجب الآثام فإن أتى وقت البلوغ والصبي بهذه الأشياء خبير النظر يعرفه مقصد الأشياء لمدة الدنيا وللأخرى وأن كل عيش للإنسان عون على عبادة الرحمن وأقوى التقوى على العبادة وهي التي تحصل بها السعادة والموت أقرب كل شيء ينتظر وهذه الدنيا لنا دار النظر والآخرة دار بقر باقي والألم لفعله ملاقي فينبغي التكثير للطاعات تزوجا في مدة الحياة. Alright, so that part always makes my hair stand up. That part, because it just he speaks about the realities of life, right? At the point of puberty, right? The realities of his life should be recited onto the child. Right? He needs to know the reality of life when he actually goes into puberty. And previously imagine someone was brought up exactly on what his book says. And what kind of amazing individual this person will actually be. The kind of taqwa that will be engraved in his heart. And in fact, we have seen communities of people who were brought up on this. Right? And they produced the greatest of saints and the greatest of people who have walked on the face of this planet. And who actually, they were brought up exactly as mentioned in this book. Right, so now, right, so subhanAllah, to actually see it manifest in front of your own eyes, and to take this book and to apply it onto your children. And to actually see this, inshallah, manifesting. Then at the age of puberty, when you bring these verses to him, and subhanAllah, I think these verses, that if I could have it framed up, on the frame and then it big in the house, because they speak about the realities of life. Right, this world is a place of passing by. Right, and the next world is a place where you are there forever. Right? And all that you are doing here is that you are just gathering things for the next world. Right? And the best thing that you can gather for the next world is obedience. And so basically all of the whole life of this world in a few verses. Done. Right? So and when you reach puberty, when your child reaches puberty, he comes to you and tells you, he got his wet dream, or she comes to you and says she got her menses. Right? You sit her down. Right, as a family, you actually sit down and you actually go through the realities of this life. Right, so now you are now legally responsible in this religion. Right, you are now, your sins will be counted. Right now, your wajib is on you. It's not on me anymore. Right, I have done my part. 10 years, 11 years, or 12 years, whatever age she's at. I have brought you up on this religion. I have taught you. Right, you know what is right. You know what is wrong, and I'm not going to chase you anymore. And it means you handle your own akhirah. And so in a sense, if you are able to do that to your child at the age of 12, subhanAllah, that means you have done your parenting. But if you can't, if you know your child, I can't do it at the age of 12, he's not ready. Right? That means that means you were lax, right, in your parenting, that at the age of 12, you actually can't let go. Right? Because by right at puberty, you should be able to let go. By right. Right? But if you can't, that means there was a lagging that happened in the parenting. Right? So by right at age of puberty, right, khalas, I let go, right, and we mentioned before that in the past, right, when a boy reaches puberty, right, the father would gather all the uncles and the grandfather and the granduncles, all the male members of the family will sit there, right, and the boy will be there, right, and the father will hold his cane, right, his stick, that he actually never used, right, but he will hold his cane, and then he will say, today my son, he has entered into the world of the adult, right, he has entered into the world of puberty, and on this day, I'll put down my cane, right? Because the pens of the angels have been lifted. So there is no need for my cane anymore. Right? The angel's pen should be enough for him, right, to stop him where he is. Right? And then and it will be said that the boy at that point was the amount of tarbiyah that he went through from the father and how he realized what his life is about. Right? He will begin to cry and he will say that if only it was my father's cane and not the pens of the angels. Right? If only it was my father's cane and not the pens of the angels lifted against me. And these people at age of, can you imagine somebody who is step 1 in our community who actually has that kind of taqwa, right? That they kind of believe, kind of abstinence that if only not the angels, like anything but the angels' pens, right? And they held on to that. Actually, he was mentioning one of his talks about how disturbed he was, that his son was telling him that in college, in university or in high school, that the students, right, regularly cheat. Right? Cheating is something that is widespread, in schools in America. Right? And he was shocked. He was like, "What? You all in college and you're cheating? What are you doing in college and cheating? Right? Who cheats in college?" Right? And then he said, "It's not what everybody does it." Right? And then he said that when he was growing up in America, right, and he was in one of the schools, right, whereby the teacher during an exam, the teacher would leave the classroom and the teacher would say, "You're on your honor, boys. You're on your honor. Right? You have your integrity. And you have your honesty. You're on your honor." And he walks out. And nobody in the class would dare cheat. Like, try to do it today lah. Walk out of the classroom when everybody's doing the exam. The first thing they will do, they ask their friend. Right? No integrity whatsoever. Nothing stops them, right, from committing sins. Right? Nothing. There's no taqwa whatsoever. Nothing stops them from doing things behind their parents' backs. Right? So where is the taqwa that has to be engraved? So here, subhanAllah, this whole book is about engraving in them this taqwa, this God consciousness, because you cannot be spying on them all the time. You can't. There has to come a point whereby, you're on autopilot. You have to know what's right, what's wrong, and you have to know what to do when you sleep. Right? And you don't need to be, helicoptering over you all the time and to see what you are doing. Khalas, 10 years of life, I've taught you. Go ahead. Right? Handle your life. Handle what you have to do. And then at that point also parents need to also know to step back. Right? Sayyidina Ali mentioned the hadith Sayyidina Ali, whereby the first 7 years, this is the hadith of parenting, on parenting. First 7 years, play with them. Play, aqidah. First 7 years, they have to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this first 7 years. They must know who is Allah, they must love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They must just think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, all the time, about Rasulullah. First 7 years, this has to be done. Right? Do not waste these first 7 years feeding them filth or feeding them things that don't benefit them whatsoever. Right? So watch what your child actually absorbs. First 7 years. The next 7 years, 7 to 14, you are a disciplinarian. Because at this point, Sharia comes in. So the first 7 years, Aqidah. The next 7 years, Sharia. And Sharia comes in, they begin to have to pray, they have to fast, they have to know about zakat, they have to pay, train them on zakah to give out of what they love and give to other people. And they are trained here and they are also trained against sins. So we're going to go into sins today. I train them against sins, primarily the sin of lying, because they weren't learned to lie from a very young age. Even before age of 7, they learn how to lie. It is a natural human defense system. It's defense mechanism for a human being to actually lie, because it's the easiest way out of any problem that you're in. You just lie. So don't be shocked to your child needs to lie, or starts to lie. Don't be like, where did she learn that from? It is a natural human tendency to actually lie. Which is why it is a mu'jiza. It is a miracle for Rasulullah that he never lied. Because which human being does not lie? Every human being lies. At some point in life, they will actually lie. But for him to never ever lie in his life, that was a miracle. Right? No human being on the face of this planet has a kind of track record of never ever lying in his life. Right? So you're going to be warning them specifically against lying. And today he will go into some of the sins. Right? And then the years from 14 to 21, right? 14 to 21, you are still in charge like a king, and the child like a minister. And so your child is now probably entering puberty. Right? So minister meaning he has to be in charge of his own land and his own governance. Right? He has to be in charge of his own land. He needs to be able to handle things himself. But at the same time, because he's still, a teenager, right, you have the last say. Right, you have when it comes to complete ridiculous matters that he wants to do, you put your foot down. Right, so if they want to go out at 12 midnight and go out with their friends, okay, that is where the line is drawn. Right? You do not do that. Right? In my household, you don't go leave the house after 10, for example. Right? So that is where you are still the king. Right? So he has leeway, right, as to what you choose to do. Right? I can advise you on which course you want to take, and then you can choose what course you want to do. Right? You can, the Sharia, I will tell you what is halal, what is haram. Right? And then you have to know, and you have to understand what is halal and what is haram, and you know you are going to handle, right, your sins, right, if you choose the haram over the halal, right, and so on. So, and then at 21, right, Sayyidina Ali advises us, at 21, you are kings of your own kingdom, right, he is no longer under you, right, and you should not be expecting your child to follow your orders. Of course, from a child's point of view, right, you obey your parent regardless. No matter what age you're at, you obey your parent. And from a parent's point of view, right, you need to understand that at the age of 14, you start loosening up your hold on the child. You start to give them as much room to grow, right, or to make their own choices, and to face the consequences of their own choices, and make them face the consequences of their own choices. I know our parents that the child takes the car, the parents' car after age of 18, takes the parents' car and then crashes the car, right, and then the parent pay for it. Don't do that. Don't. My parents never did that for me. Okay. Right, if I crash my mom's car, I pay. Right, even though I'm 18, 19. No, you work for it. They might pay, but it is a loan. Right, so you're gonna pay your parents back. Right, so it's tarbiyah. You don't always sweep up after them. Right, age of 14 start. Right, in fact, age of 7 I would say start not to sweep up after them. You made a mistake in school. Right, you got into trouble. Okay? Right, then face the consequences. Right, but make sure they learn the lesson behind their mistakes. So don't be those parents who actually always sweep up after their children. Do not do that. Right. So age 21, you have your own kingdoms. As a parent, you are an advisor. Understand your position. You are an advisor. You do not force your child on anything. Right. If you have brought the child up, it's up to him what he wants to do. Now, of course, when it comes to your rights, right, if you want him to help you out with something, or you want him to look after you, all that, of course, it's your rights. You can ask. Right? But, for example, which house to buy, what job to take, that kind of thing. It's his business, his life. Let him choose. And of course, if you see it's haram, you can advise against it. But if he still chooses that path, then his path. His path, you have advice. You are an advisor over your child. That's it. Right? Whether or not they choose to take your advice is up to them. You should not get upset, right? If you don't choose and that is where you actually avoid a lot of conflicts between parents and children and in-laws, right? Because you don't get involved. And my father, alhamdulillah, right? He was much of a controlling father as we were growing up. But the moment we married, right? The moment I got married and I moved out of the house, he never got involved by affairs, ever. Even though he disagrees completely, he will never get involved because he knows that now you are under the word of your husband. Right? He's going to make it very difficult on me. Right? If he keeps trying to get involved in my affair when I have a husband to actually obey. Right? So subhanAllah. So at least as a parent he understood. Right? You are under your husband, you want to go tarim, go lah. Like you want to go wherever you go lah. You want to buy, you go and buy lah. You want to, whatever. Do whatever you have to do. He has brought us up. Right? That is our undoing as parents, to let go. Alright, so here he says يحذره غاية التحذير, right? So to warn him with a very stern warning, right? To be غاية التحذير means to the end of warning. It means be very harsh about this. من الكذب, from lying. I do not allow lying at all. It's not something that you just you blink about it and you talk about it and you let it go. No, right? Show how upset you are when they lie. Show it. Right? Don't beat them or anything, don't harm them. Right? But show I'm very disappointed in this lie. Right? Very, very upset you lied to me in my face. Or very upset you did this thing behind my back when I told you not to do it. Understand that at the age of 10 years, they can handle that kind of words. You do it on the age of 4-year-old, 5-year-old, like it's good pastor. Right? Age of 10, 9, 10, you give them that kind of words, right? They will never forget. Right? They will never forget, especially if you're someone who has never hit them before. right? And so when you give stern words, straight away they wake up, right? Never lie. Don't you ever lie to me, right? And there is a, and you know, there's a story of I'm not sure which of the, I think Syekh Abdul Jalani, if I'm not wrong, him, right? Whereby he was his mother, right? When his mother sent him out to go and study, right? And then she sewed money into his clothes, into his clothing, right? So that if there's any highway robbers, they won't be able to find the money, right, on his clothing. So there were 40 golden coins, 40 gold coins. So when he was on his trip to go and study, right, they were actually intercepted by a gang of highway robbers, right? And when they came to him and they asked him, "Do you have, oh young boy, do you have any money on you?" And then because they couldn't find any money on him because it was all sewn into his clothing. So he said, "Yeah, right, there's money on me." Because he remember before he left his house, his mother said, "You know, whatever you do, my son, don't lie. Just don't lie. Never lie." Right? So when they asked him, "Do you have any money on you?" He said, "Yeah, I have money on me." And he said, "Where? I don't see any money on you." And then he said, "Here, it's on here, and it's on here, and it's on here." And he showed where all the money is being sewn. And then the robbers were like, "Well, they were very well hidden within your clothing. Why do you tell us? Right, where's your money?" And then he said that before I left my town, my mom said not to lie. Right, so you asked me what's my money, and I tell you, what's my money? So, and the robbers were so moved, right, by the honesty of this young boy, right, that they all made tawbah, they all repented at his hands, and they went to also study knowledge, right, secret knowledge. Right, so subhanAllah, so lying is of the greatest vice. There's a hadith about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, where he says that, you know, the Muslim he is not a liar. Right, the believer is not a liar. Right, the believer does not lie, does not lie. Right, you can really emphasize this, emphasize down their throats. Right, we do not lie as Muslims. Right, as Muslims. Right, and then he says, "Well, fuhush." Right, fuhush is fahisha. Fahisha is indecencies. Right, and he's really talking about the very things, right, that you need to watch out for. Lying from your children. Allah curses the liar. Right, so right, Allah curses the curse of Allah is on the liar, right, the one who lies between his teeth. Right, so this is the first sin that that our children, especially in their teenage years, they would fall into. Right, the first sin is the sin of lying. Right, not telling their parents exactly where they were, what they were doing, right, what they are up to, right. So, and inshallah, if they are on taqwa, there's no need for to lie. Right, if you don't do anything wrong, you don't have to lie, right, to anyone, right. And then, and I saw, like, as a tutor, I see it so many times. I don't lie to their parents in their parents' faces. Exactly. So, as a tutor, I know what happened. Like, I know, you know, what happened in class, because they will tell me everything. Right, so I know exactly who was in the wrong, and I know exactly the kind of carelessness that they did, right, in class, and why the teacher was scolding them. Right, I know. But then when the mother comes and asks, "Oh, I got a call from the teacher, I got an email from the teacher about this and this," was about, straight away the child, "Oh, the teacher, right, he was the one who was busy and he didn't see that I should do my work," and so the entire blame went on the teacher. And the mother, right, she's in the position whereby, "Yeah, you know, if that's the case, then maybe the teacher misunderstood you. But I know she was playing the whole time in class." Right, so I know, and the teacher knows, right, that she was not paying attention. She was playing the whole time. That's why she was held back after school. But she was like, "No, I had a question, but the teacher didn't come to me because of my question. So I sat there waiting. So because of that, I didn't do any of my work in class." But what she was doing, she was talking to her friends, and she was playing. She told me that. Right, when the mother came, all lies, complete lies. Right, and then someone can say, "He was the one who's not paying attention. He's the one who didn't see what my hand raised up and whatever." I know she was lying. Right, so it's very easy for them. When the mother comes to them, they lie. Right, when they bring the exam results back to me, and I look through as a tutor, I can see that you didn't study. Obviously, right, from the answers, I can see them. As teachers, we can see study or didn't study. We can see. Right, very obvious from the answers. Right, but what they tell the parents? "Oh, half the class failed." Or 70% of the class failed. So everybody didn't study lah, basically. Or they will say, and I always hear my students, they will say, "Oh, I was very careless." And then I will say, "No, you were not careless, you didn't study." Right? He said, no, I was careless. He said, wrong because you don't know. Not careless. The answer is wrong. It's not a careless mistake. Right? So it says, I actually will point it out to the parents. Right? When they begin to give excuses for themselves to their parents. Right? To the parents, it's a fair paper. Not hard at all. If she memorized, if I told her to memorize, she would have known this. Right? But she did not. So basically, to tell, but what did they tell the parents? Oh, everybody felt it was a ridiculous paper. It was too hard. And the parents had no clue. The parents had no clue. So it's such a hard killer paper. I was like, it's not a killer paper, okay? It's an easy paper. You didn't study. Right, so, but they lie. I think so many secondary school kids, you know they lie. They lie. Through their teeth, they lie. Right, so be very hard on them. Right, against lying. We do not lie. Tell me the truth. Right, and then on the other hand, don't flip. You know, when the truth is being told. Right, don't freak out. Right, when they actually tell you the truth. Right, but remain calm. Say, okay, that's the truth. Right, you told me the truth in study, right, or you went somewhere else. You're supposed to go somewhere else with your friends. Okay, that's the truth. Right. So what do you think is the consequence? That kind of thing. Right. So what do you think about this right now? Okay. So it means be calm about it. Right, don't freak out, right, when you tell you the truth. Okay, so it means be pleased that they're actually honest with you. Right, so against lying, right, we'll go into a few hadiths about lying. Right, this is so much to be said about lying. Subhanallah. Right, so Muazzali, right, he says here, right, Allah to Islam, قدس الله سره يخوف من السرقة وأكل الحرام ومن الكذب والخيانة والفحش وكل ما يغلب على صبيان وقد مر ذكر الكذب والخيانة في التحذير عن المجالسة من يرى التكبر ذلك لأن يألفه وهذا المراد مباشرته لما ذكر. Right, so here he says here, right, that so about lying, so Imam Ghazali says you know to warn him and to really warn him, and to really warn him against stealing, against taking what is haram, eating the haram, eating meaning consuming food that is haram, and also taking money that is haram, or things that are haram. Right? Be very harsh on them at this point because they are at the age of 10, 11, 12. They need to start paying attention, right, and not take this life, foolishly, right. And then it's just from lying and from treachery. Khiyana is basically you promise something and you don't do it, right? Or someone trusts you and you go against their trust, you betray the trust, right? You be very harsh against this, right? And then he said, and fuhush, okay, fuhush, right? Fahisha, there's so much to be said about indecencies, about lewdness, right? So if you sense anything from your child, especially at this age, when it comes to indecencies, you need to clamp down immediately. Yeah, it needs to be clamped down. I don't think, oh, it's nothing, oh, it's what. I saw, I think I mentioned before, right? My friend's two sons, right? They were at another friend's house, right? And they saw a Barbie doll, right? And they unclothed the Barbie doll, right? And they were playing with it, right? In a way, and they were 10, 11 years old, right? And I went up to the mother. I was like, look, your sons are doing this. And she said, it's a doll. It's not just a doll, okay? It's a Barbie doll with woman essence, right? So if it was me, I would. It was my son. Straight away, I would flip out. Right? But I'll pull them aside, right? And not scold, not scream at them, right? But I'll pull them aside and basically speak to them, right, from the point of this region. Right, do you think that the eyes and the hands that play with this, right, do you think they will be honored, right, in this world and the next? Those who want to memorize the Quran, looking at the figures of women, right, what are you doing? Tell me, right? Are you subhanallah? I would sit down with them and have a long talk about this. Right, basically not to let it go, right? This darknesses that enter the hearts. Right, I know of, and you if you work with students enough, right, it's dirty in primary schools, I won't even say secondary schools, primary schools, it's dirty, right, if you work with them enough. I worked in the primary school before, for a while, right? Subhanallah, primary 4 start already. What's primary 3 start already? Right, so they will start to whatever lah. They will compare things amongst each other, right? There are bad influences out there, so you need to really guard your children. You need to guard your children. Do not give them any devices. Right? There's so much violence out there, so much. Right? So as far as until they can buy their own device, they get no device. You can buy your own phone, then you can have your own phone. Otherwise, even then, I'm going to like guard over what you do with your phone. Right? So subhanallah, for me, until puberty, 15. If at 15 they want their own phone, okay, go and buy your own phone, go and save your own money, go and buy your own phone, pay your own bill. That's what my parents did to me. And I was not even interested in all of these things, all these rudeness and these instances. Right? But my parents made me my own phone, buy your own money, pay your own bills. Right? Be your own person. I mean, you don't depend on me if you want the phone. Right? And you want a laptop, buy your own laptop. Right? Save up your money. Right? And then help me pay for the internet bills. Right? What about that? And basically, you make them adults if they want to have adult things. Right, subhanallah. So, stop spoiling our kids. Right, so fush. Yeah. I won't tell you the stories I've heard in primary school, secondary school. I'm sure you all know. Right, you can read enough articles out there of what goes on in primary schools in Singapore. Right, and madrasas, even in madrasas, right, I work in a madrasah before. Right, even in madrasas, you will be shocked. Right, what goes around with the boys. What the boys talking about. Right? And not just the boys, the girls also. Right? And I mentioned it before. Right? All of these things. So I can't even emphasize enough. Right? And the amount of not just that, of what they're watching online. Right? And I think so many parents are in denial. Right? Too many parents are in denial of what's going on online. Do not allow sleepovers. Don't allow sleepovers. If they want sleepover, come my house. Right, because especially these things happen at sleepovers. And when they go to someone else's house with unmonitored internet, and all these things, cousins, friends, right? You don't know what's going on. That is when, if you read enough always articles online, you will say that the child the person I watched it was at so and so's house, right? And he showed this to us, right? So then I knew about this, and when I came back, I wanted to watch more. Right? It's an addiction, It's an addiction. You read so many articles online, right? About how even children would even admit to their parents what they are watching and say, I cannot stop. Right? And they become a bit crazy. Right? When they are denied. Right? They become crazy when they're denied. They will go out there and try and find ways to do it. And the worst case, which I personally handled when I was teaching in the schools, right, is that they actually harm the girls in their class. Right, they begin to do things to the girls and harm them. Right, so that has happened in the primary schools. They begin to touch, basically, seriously they begin to do it. Right, and that is where the harm happens. Right, either to the people in the classrooms or to their own family members. The younger ones, younger cousins, younger sisters, it happens in the family. Right, so you don't, and I know people say, who have told me it was my cousin, or told me it was my brother, or told me it was my second cousin, or my own classmate, or whosoever. They will say stuff, right? And you're like, subhanallah, what is going on? And this is primary 6, almost crying. And this is primary 5, doing all this kind of crime. It's a crime. But they fall into the crime, why? Because they were exposed too young, right? And not even just here, watch the books they are reading. Right? My mother, she never allowed me to read Sweet Valley, ever in my life. I read Babysitter's Club when I was young, and I read Annie Brighton Dancing Through, right? And I read Famous Five, I read kind of books lah. Right? But when my friends were reading Sweet Valley, and I was like, I want to try and read Sweet Valley, see whether it's interesting or not. My mother was like, no. Straight away, no. And she has never read it before in her life. My mom has no idea what Sweet Valley is. But she said, from the book, you are not reading this. She did not allow me. Right, because up to now I have no idea what's in there. I can guess it's like girly stuff and like whatever, right? And they're very high, whatever. So then what do they go into? They go into boys, right? So my mother just looked at the book, no. She didn't even have to read it. She just can sense this book, bad news. Right? So Subhanallah, so books also, right? The one that the kids I was handling in primary school once, the boy, it wasn't gadgets, it was novels. He was reading Malay novels. And these Malay novels had descriptions in there that the mother never expected. So he was reading a lot of this kind of things, right? At primary 6, primary 5, right? So then this pollutes the mind. And you know English novels? Confirm there'll be a scene somewhere. Confirm. It's somewhere in there, right? There will always be an indecent scene in a novel, right? So novels not allowed. You're not allowed to read novels, right? Ever. Right? So just, even books be warned about books, about TV shows. You don't have to say so much about it. Just throw out everything, throw out, right? If when once they reach this kind of age, 10, 11, 12, push them towards fiction. It was non-fiction, sorry. It was non-fiction. My mom did that with me. Right? At the age of these ages, right, she will make me read more science books. She will read more religious books, right? Seerah, right? Stories of the Prophet, stories of the Sahaba. So there are many stories out there. Go towards non-fiction. Right? Stop with your fiction already. Halas, enough. Right? Your fiction was good enough for you to build up your language. That's it. Right? When you go into the age of 10, you should have no more need for fiction. There should be no more need, right, to go into this world of fantasy. You don't have to anymore. Your language should be sound, right, by then. So for me, fiction is actually good enough for language. That's it. Right? Once you've gotten your language, and in fact, if you go in non-fiction straight away to get the language, then that's great. Right? Because for Arabic, a lot of the books I read, they improve my language. Right? Imam al-Haddad, Imam Ghazali, they have good, like this book is full of good language. Right? So you pick up your language from there. Right, instead of something that is of course for kids, give them fiction because to get their attention. Right, but age of 10, 11, 12, try to push them towards fiction. Right, when it comes to books. Right, no more, it just gets more and more disgusting. Okay, frankly put, it gets more and more disgusting, this books. Alright, okay, so he says, Sayyidina Muhammad, alright, so when right, so and the reason why he's being so harsh against sin is because when what sin does to a person, and we know from a hadith that when the son of Adam commits a sin, there is a black spot on his heart. Right, the ulama comments, what is this black spot? This black spot is basically a barrier from the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the human being's heart is exposed to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide him through life. Right, the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and light of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam guides him through life. Right? So he knows what is right, what is wrong, and when he sees something that is wrong, or when he's engaged something that is wrong, he will have the pain in his heart to pull him out or to push him out of what his situation is in and to make tawbah. So your child is about to enter into puberty. This is essential for you to preserve this heart and not let it be clouded by this blackness. So when he does a sin, a small black spot forms, and when he feels repetitive about it, right, and he makes istighfar, the black spot gets wiped out, right, and then the light comes in again. But if he does more and more and more sins, right, this black spot forms over the heart to the point whereby he no longer feels the pain of sin, nor the guilt of sin, and then he goes and he dives into sin, and he has no clue or he has no guilt whatsoever. So he's completely engulfed in sin. And from there, he can't see the light anymore. He can't see the truth anymore. And he is lost. Right? Lost in his darknesses. Right? And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on him, Allah will cause something to happen to him in his life to break that black heart. Right? To break that black heart. Cause some rays of light to come in, right? To pull him back. Right? Or otherwise, he is left in his delusion. Right? Of the darkness of sin. So sin is dangerous. No matter how small the sin is dangerous. Right? And you make it clear to your child that lying is a great sin. It's a big sin. Right? We don't lie. Right? The trait of Rasulullah is that he never lied. Right? So be very harsh about it. About indecencies. Right? None of the prophets, nor the Sahaba, nor the Tabi'in, none of these people ever even go near indecencies. Even Rasulullah, when he describes all these things, between the man and woman, right, in fiqh, right, in law, in Islamic law, right, he will use terms to actually, not say specifically what it is. right? Because of the shyness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So he will say, the kubul, right, the front, right, the back, right? So to talk about the private parts of a human being, and then or he will say, either like when a man goes to his wife, right, that means what it means, right? So he uses terms, right, that mask all these activities out of his shyness. And the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to actually use terms, right, to cover. To use terms, not to say the direct term itself, right, but to actually use terms to cover up, right, for your children. When you have to mention about this matters, right? So use terms. So the private parts, all that. Use terms, like your privates. Enough. I don't have to mention exactly what it's called and whatever, right? Just use terms to cover. It is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to actually speak that way. Right? Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright, and then Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, and it's also so the scholar say the man does what a sin once and he feels as if he just fell into a pit. Right, so when you do it once, you feel as if you just fell into a pit, and he'll be so disturbed by it and he try his best to get out. But if he keeps doing it, right, then he will make this pit his home, and he'll be comfortable in this pit of sin. Right, so he's just like, therefore I'm just here, I'm going to stay where I am, and not come out of his pit. Right, so al-fuhash, right, so be warned against fuhash. For your girls, right, be very careful about what clothing you give them, what they can wear, and also what merchandise they have. Right, so they have kind of fairies, so I don't know what they are. Right, but it's kind of like pixies and fairies, where they wear very short skirts. Right, and like very revealing clothing. Just don't give it to them. Right, I think when I was teaching in one of all those madrasas in Singapore, right, very one girls, covering up in their aurat and their hijab and everything, and in their bag, all those pixies with super short skirts, and like tank tops, and then coming to school to learn the religion. Right, why are the parents giving them those bags? Why? Don't think, it's just a bag, they suka, right? No, the girl is, I feel shy looking at the pixie. It's a cartoon, right? But look at the shortness of the skirt. Right? Must she have that bag? Must. Give her a cat bag. Easier, right? Cat, pony, animal lah. Easier if she needs to have something pretty. She can have pretty things, okay, it's fine. Right? But mothers, where's the shame that you give? That day, someone bought for my niece a Barbie doll again, and that you can clothe her. So there are different clothings for her, and every one of the clothing was a super short skirt. Stress. I told my mother, throw away, don't let her see. She's a 3-year-old girl. And what does she know? Right? Don't let her see, throw it away before she sees it. Because then she will cry and she will tantrum that it's thrown away. Don't even let her see it. Right? And for me, my mother never allowed us to have Barbie dolls. I grew up without Barbie dolls. Right? Because why? I have 5 brothers. Right? 5 older brothers. Right? So my mother was watching her sons. Right? So I'm not allowed to have dolls that have woman parts because she has sons in the house. So all I ever had was beanie dolls. They had no parts. Right? So it was beans, beanie, those kind of beanie dolls that were like. That's all I could play with. That's all, and cats. Play with cats. Right? Subhanallah. But I appreciate her now. I appreciate that she actually watched out. And I used to wonder, why can I have? And she would just not ever buy it for us. Right? And then she used to make sure our clothing also, right, not too tight. So if they're not wearing hijab, and I didn't wear hijab until I was puberty. Right? Because my father was not of that view. But my mother never allowed us to wear tights. Right? Because we have 5 brothers. And 4 brothers in the house. Right? Clothing that are too tight, not allowed. Right? So we have to wear track pants. So we were given track pants. Right? It's kind of like, cotton. Right? And t-shirts, and that's what you wear in the house. Then when I reached puberty, I don't know why, but I actually stopped completely wearing short sleeves. So even till today, I wear long sleeves in the home. I just feel uncomfortable in short sleeves. So the only time I actually wear short sleeves is when I actually go to school. Right? And you wear your uniform and short sleeve. Right? But at home, I wear a long sleeve t-shirt. I don't know why I did that. Right? I don't think my mom forced it on me also. right? But because my sister would wear short sleeves, right? So, but I always felt comfortable always wearing long sleeves. Totally. Right? So I just don't wear short sleeves ever. And they were uncomfortable lah. Short sleeves. And so I go wear. Like I've seen when I go to my friend's house, like they wear like spaghetti straps. Whether they wear hijab, like in the house they wear spaghetti straps. When I was a teenager lah. Yeah, in the house, you will be. You are shocked. Almost all of my friends in secondary school, almost all of my friends go home, buka, spaghetti straps in the house. Some of them they wear hijab outside, but in the home they wear shorts. Right? There is aurat between family, Aurat between family is your neighbor to your knee, which does not mean you go around in spaghetti straps. Also, you actually, if you have a father in the house, you have a brother in the house, even if you have female members in the house, to honor the people of the house, cover up a bit more. Right? In Tarim, they actually have a shawl. This for the elegancy. So they were actually in the house, they wear dress. Like they still also have like nice dresses, like where they have like the rubber here. It's nice, but you won't wear it outside because it's too figure showing. Right? But you buy them and you wear them in the house. Right? They're like nice, like they're frilly and whatever lah. You can buy you can buy nice dresses, right? And my teacher Zainab, she wears nice clothing, colored clothing, nice clothing in the house, even nice shawl that is loosely wrapped around her head. Right? And she walks around the house very elegantly. Right? And her husband is there, the sons are there. Right? For them to, appreciate that the mother is elegant in the house. Subhanallah. I'm not like, malas. Pakai butterflies. And the butterfly baju at the night. It's just the most comfortable thing now ever. Right? But that's subhanallah. Your girls, okay? Do not let your girls be an attraction, right, to the men in the house, even if they are male family members. Right? Do not let any fitna happen, right, in the house. Guard your girls. When they leave the house, my mom used to always give us a quick check. Before we left the house, she would just scan up and down, see whether okay or not. If okay, go. If not okay, she'll point it out. Too tight, too short, go back. Right, go back, change. Right, that means she did not allow us, right, to go out in whatever we wanted to wear. Right, even though we were teenagers at that time, she would do a spot check. Right, whatever you want. Right, I just saw, I don't know, somebody added me on Facebook today. Random person lah. Right, so I just clicked up who's this person lah. So that person was a graduate of Al-Azhar. Right, but then of her pictures, she was wearing very tight jeans. So I was like, I'm not judging lah, but I'm like, Yani, like, why is she wearing tight jeans? Right, and you're a graduate of Al-Azhar, Sharia. If you have studied to a level, you should have the knowledge manifest on your being. It should be manifested. Right? So, subhanallah. And so I appreciated my mom for that. Right? That she never allowed us to have tight jeans. And don't go into fads, into fashions whatsoever. Let your child decide for themselves, but you teach them to think. Right? So there was a fashion that some time ago I saw. When I was in when I was in Tarim, it was going on in Singapore. This like high-waisted jeans and they tuck in. Right? Like a fashion going on with teenagers. Right? So sometimes people follow fashions without thinking. Right? So if your child wants to follow that fashion, okay, sit her down just for a while. Okay, let's look at this dress. Okay. What's wrong? What's going on here? Can you see the size of her waist? Oh yeah, you can. And that baju, I remember that fashion was high-waisted kan? Right? So you can exactly see her crotch area. Right? If you remember that fashion. Right? So can you see? Yes, you can. Haram. How many of our girls who were in their hijabs were in that fashion? Quite a number, Quite a number they took on that fashion. Right? Not thinking, where is this? Right? When it comes to also, something on forever. Right? So many things. Right? So make them think first. Right? The fashion of also, hijab. Right? So sometimes it's fashionable to wear it this way. Okay. Is her breasts fully covered, properly covered? Right? Does she wear tight, clothing inside? Right? Where can you see the shape? So as a woman, you judge. Can you see the shapes? You can. Don't do it. Don't do it. Right? I was telling one of my friends the other day that there was a fashion that was good. There's no fashion side. Unless you follow fashion without thinking at all. Just follow it. And then when you're old, you're like, why in the world did I wear that? And you're thinking, why did my mom stop me from wearing that? Right? There is this fashion, this is what you tell people about wedding gowns. Right? If I saw it a few times, a few of my friends, if I had known, I would have stopped them. Right? But the wedding gown is white, then the inner is black. It was a fashion. Right? So the inner is black. So the wedding gown is a normal Western wedding gown, whereby it's like cleavage and whatsoever. The inner is black. Right? And they wear hijab. Right? What does that do? That emphasizes her essence. Exactly. Like white over her essence and then black around the essence. Does that cover the aura or not? Obviously not. Everyone who comes to the wedding, to the Palamin, sees her exactly her essence. That's all they see. Right? But the black covers the aura, right? But it emphasizes everything else. Right? Take care of your girls. Don't let them be deluded. Right? Fujur is open sin. Open public sin. Right? To be very, very harsh on fujur. And not to allow fujur. Right? So here he says here, وَأَمَّا الْفُحْشُ فَهُوَ مَا جَاوَزَ الْحَدِّ. Right? What is fuhsh? Right? What is indecencies? Is something that goes completely, it really transcends all the boundaries. Right? That is al-fuhsh. وَمِنْهُ مَادَةُ الْفَحْشَاء وَهِيَ مَا عَظُمَ قَبْحُهُ مِنَ الْأَفْعَالِ وَالْأَقْوَالِ. Right, so subhanallah, right, so subhanallah, this will mean them warn them strongly against any form of indecencies, right, any form of open sin, right. So open sin basically removes the muru'ah, right, the dignity of a human being. Open sins, right. So warn them if you see them committing sin in the open, warn them against it. Right, and then stealing, right, of course stealing should not be even in the situation. Right, if they begin to steal, right, and of course under stealing comes with taking things without permission. Right, of course they might not think it's stealing, it is stealing. Right, I have had students who come to the house for tuition, right, and then what they do, they actually, while I go off for a while or whatsoever, they go to my Wi-Fi box and get the password. That's called stealing. That's actually called stealing. Right? Because you did not ask, I won't have the password anyway. Right? But you went there by yourself, without my permission, look for the password, put it into your phone. That is stealing. Right? You're not allowed to do that. You have to ask my permission first. It's my password. It's my Wi-Fi. Right? So they don't realize what they have done is actually a sin. Right? So that for me, I have no issue using my Wi-Fi. I have no issue whatsoever. Ask me. Have the decency to ask. Right? So teach your children. Right? Teach them. Right? That whatever you take from a person's house, have the decency to ask first. Right? Even if you want to use a toilet, you want to take some water, right? It's just decent. Right? To just me, I take some. Of course, they will let you take some. Right? But just ask them first. Right? From stealing and from eating what is haram. Right? Eating what is haram. Specifically, haram foods and haram drinks. Train them on halal, right? Or if you know what, if you're not sure, just stay away. You don't have to eat all of these things, right? And then on money that is haram, also how you actually earn this money, right? My mom was telling me that, I mean, they play games among their friends, and they don't actually realize they are doing better. Right? Sometimes games amongst kids, when I was in primary school, they used to play this game, this ridiculous game, amongst my friends. I used to want, I didn't take part in it, but I knew they were doing it. Right? So when I was in primary school, right, there was this, the Teletubbies was something that was like, you know, the in thing in primary school. So what these kids would actually do, which is ridiculous, right, is actually every day they would come together and guess which is the Teletubby that will come out at the end of the show. Because there's one that comes out, right? So they will actually guess. And they put money on it now. $1. And they put $1. So the one who wins gets all the money. So they were actually betting in primary school. Right, so subhanallah. You know, haram money. You never even guessed it would happen. And now I look back and say, yeah, they were actually doing it. And no one And because yes, you always playing a game, just guessing which Teletubby was. But alhamdulillah, I was a shy girl, I never got involved in a lot of things. Too shy to talk to anybody. So alhamdulillah, just watch. I never get involved. Alright, alhamdulillah. Alright, and the riba. Right, so to also warn them, right, فَإِنَّهُ مِنْ مُوجِبِ الْأَثَامِ. Right, so eating what is haram will cause a person to go into the haram. Right, he will do what is haram. And here the Shaykh he continues, says that, and to warn them strongly against the afat, and the afat is the other vices, but stronger. Like the calamities, right, of the tongue. Right, the calamities of the tongue, right, what can destroy you by your tongue. Right, and the Rasulullah said that in the hadith, that if you can guarantee for me what is between your two jaws and what is between your two legs, then I will guarantee for you paradise. Right, so between your two your jaws, right, is your tongue, and between your legs are your private parts. Right, so if you can guarantee these two things to be protected, right, and not go over the line, and not to transgress the line, then he also guarantees for you paradise. And a lot of the ulama say the one between the jaws is harder to actually guarantee than the one between the legs, right? Because it's like, oh, so hard to hold it, right? So that one is, so we have to learn diseases of the tongue. So the first disease of the tongue that he mentions here is riba, right? Backbiting, right? We're in Ramadan. I make a vow, subhanallah, ya Allah, Ramadan, no, I'm not going to talk about any people in any negative way whatsoever. I'm not going to backbite. And make it easier for you that you actually announce this to your family and friends. Make it easier. So say, you know what, to your family and friends, we are not going to backbite the entire of this month. We are not. And of course, you must train yourself the whole year. But Ramadan especially, don't waste your fasting. Right, so make amongst your family, your children. Right, so especially your children, when they come back home and they begin to backbite their friends in school, right, and tell you all about their friends and what their friends did, right, it's actually backbiting. It is backbiting. Of course, it's reporting to you what's going on in school. You want to know, right, who's your friends, what you all doing. Right, but at this age, they should be old enough to know what is right and what is wrong. So if they come home and they complain about the teacher, right, and say, oh, the teacher is so smelly, the teacher is so, straight away backbiting. Right, but you don't say that. Right, don't say that. Right, tomorrow bring the teacher a gift. Right. It's a good idea. Right, but don't backbite. They come up and say, oh, my friend, she's so, I just complaining about that one person. Backbiting. It's backbiting. So you must teach your child, why not make dua for her? Right, don't have to tell me anything also. Just make dua for your friend, and it's better. Right, if you talk bad about people, right, then you know what happens? Right, they will take your pahala. Do you know that? Tell them that. And if you have no pahala, you have no good deeds, then you take their sins. Do you know that? Tell them the hadith of the bankrupt. Some say, who is the bankrupt? The Sahaba is the one who has no money and has no earnings. And then Rasul said, no, the bankrupt from my ummah is the one who counts the mountains of good deeds on the day of judgment. But he heard that one. He insulted that one. He backbite that one. Right? And they came to him claiming their rights from him. So he gives and gives and gives until there's nothing left. And there are still people coming to him to claim rights. Right? And what do? They dump their sins on him. Right? And then he'll be taken and dragged into the hellfire, even though he came initially with a lot of good deeds. Right? That is the background. It means you harsh on them about backbiting, and you don't backbite. So you don't backbite them about anybody, anything, right? At all. Right? So backbiting, is one of the greatest sins. Right? It's worse than 70 zina. Right? Worse than 70 zina. Right? Namima is to tail bear. Right? Tail bearing, batu api in Malay, whereby you spread a tail spring to people to make them fight. Right? So be warned if your child is the one who is doing it to make people fight. Right? So be peaceful people. Right? Sukhriya wa istihza, these are also diseases of the tongue. Mocking and making fun. Right? Teasing. Right? Name calling, mocking, making fun. Don't allow it at all from your children. So when they call somebody hitam lah, or you know, like whatever lah, like bandit lah, whatever. And they say things like you black person, you short person, you know, they make fun of people, or they make fun of their brothers or their sisters or their cousins or whoever around them, and they make fun. Stop it. Right? Warn them against it. You do not make fun. Right? The Muslim does not make fun of anyone. Right? And to honor all believers. Right? And then he says, so all of these are of the sins, right, of the tongue. And then on top of that, you have to also warn them against riya, against arrogance, especially if you're bringing your child up on the religion, right, to make sure that they have humility, right, when it comes to other people who are not practicing. So when you do see other people who are, you know, they don't really cover up well, or you know, they are whatsoever lah, right, to teach your child to have humility, right, and humbleness to these people. Don't be an arrogant, self-righteous person. No, but be humble, dua for them, love them. You know, may Allah subhanahu give them more, you know, than what He has given us. You know, Allah increase them, right, and understand that all that you have is Allah's mercy on you, Allah's blessing on you. So here at this age, you're going to do a lot of more talking, because they have to begin to understand this religion well, right, and what this religion is all about. Right? It's not about going around being self-righteous, being arrogant at all. Right? But it is basically to place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the focus of everything in your life. Right? That is what Islam is about. Right? And then he says that so from riya, right, from riya of his good deeds, right, and to know and to teach him that to have pride over his good deeds is a small form of shirk. Right? It is a hidden shirk, right, in this form. So here he actually mentions this. He actually mentions that, you know, riya bil a'mal salih al-ukhrawi. That means to have riya in good deeds for the akhirat. Warn them. Right? Warn them against this. Right? You don't want them to be self-righteous, annoying children. Right? But be humble about this. Right? And then teach them that everybody enters paradise only by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we do all these obediences only to get the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing else. And if Allah has mercy on us, He enters paradise. If He doesn't have mercy on us, then, you know, no one else can have mercy on us if it's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright. And then he says here to actually teach them about the sins of zina. Right? So that's very near puberty or almost puberty. Right? So you will teach them, you're going to speak to them, right, about this matters. They're going to be old enough. You engage with your own child to see where they are at. Right? My teacher, Zainab, right, and her boy is 12 years old. He has no clue, zero, about these matters. Nothing. Just that is so pure. So he has no clue, nothing. So she doesn't talk to me on about it. Right? So only when he goes into puberty, right, then his father will speak to him about it. Right? But right now he's before puberty. He's really 12. Most of our kids at 12, they know a lot of things. Right? But he at 12 has no clue, right, about where babies come from. He thinks come from the knees. And he's 10 years old. MashaAllah. Right, it's cute. Right, my children, however, to ask about it. That in Tariq, there could be people who are married and they have no idea anything. So for the first year of marriage, they are still virgins. They have no clue. Blur. Both husband and wife. Right, because they're very young. Right, and then they're teenagers now when they get married. And they just don't know idea what they're supposed to do. Right, so, subhanallah. Right, pure. But our kids, right, I would say age of 10, 9. Right, that's what. In primary school, there's sexual education. Kan? You be the one who teach them first. Don't let the school teach them first. You teach them first. And they are including elements of homosexuality in our education. Beware. Right, beware. Okay, so there are also books on that topic in the library. Also, beware what your kids are reading. Huh? Yeah, even for young children. There was this article that someone wrote, was lesbian, writing very proudly, like on Disney film Frozen, on how progressive it is, in new age homosexuality. I never watched the film before in my life. I've never watched the film before in my life. I don't know anything about the film. But she wrote an article, right, about it and about how happy she is that Disney is progressing, right, and accepting, right, all forms of sexuality. So I don't know. I never watched the film, right, but she as a lesbian, she was proud about it. She was happy that the film, is progressive. Allahu A'lam. Watch all these things. Like what these people they don't want the best for your kids, They don't want the best for your kids. Disney is a big culprit. Right? Disney is filthy. Disney is filthy. From Snow White time. From Snow White the cartoon until now, Disney is full of filth. Okay, so I know a lot of people grew up with Disney, right? But you can go and read up. Disney is not innocent. They're trying to twist our children, right, and to corrupt our children, right? So I watched parts of the film Tangled, like the Rapunzel one, right? I only watched a few of the scenes. Someone was playing it or something, and in the aeroplane that you walk past, like you were playing it. I just saw her glasses and I was like, that is seductive. Straight away came to my mind. Right, the way they drew the girl, right, and they drew her in a very inappropriate way. I sensed it. Like, this is not a good film. Right, they're doing something in that film. Right? When I was watching, I was like, there was I can sense an ugliness in it. Right, there is a lot of promiscuity in there. Right, so don't be naive. Right? Don't brush it under cartoon. Right, that's what they want you to do. Right, cartoon, brush it. Don't fall through it. Right, let's say Disney cartoons out, throw it out. Now, of course, Sheikh Hamzah has an entire talk about it, about how the themes always are around rebelling against parents, right, disrespect of parents. There's always a love scene somewhere going on, right? There's always there's so much filth in there that there's no goodness. And the songs get stuck in the head. Right? Forever in life, you know all the songs. Right? And then your surahs, your zikr, your whatever, and the amount of time you waste in front of it, and then the dressing, you can go on and on. Right? Why are we letting our kids aggrandize people who are dressed in that way and behave in that way with other genders and do all kinds of things I'm not supposed to do? That day, one of my friends, a little girl, loves this princesses, right? Because this princesses also is very dunya. This is very dunya. It's all about the beautiful girl, the pretty girl. What does it do to their self-esteem? They're so slim, they're so pretty, they're so this, they're so that, and then the glamour of it all. It's not good. Don't feed them this kind of images at all. Subhanallah. Right, and this made them think at this age made them think like, you see the girl, like how she's dressed, would you want me to dress that way? Point at yourself. Right, because maybe for them they might not feel it. But if you see how the princess dresses up, okay, what if Umi wears that way? Your child will flip. She would actually flip. No, you cannot wear like that. Then don't you love me? And then you love this girl also who wears like that. Your child will freak out. You're gonna wear like that? No. Right, so no. Okay. So here he's saying, so be aware. Do not be a naive parent. The media is not on your side. Don't ever let them convince you that they are. They're on Dajjal, Shaitan, whatever they are. Just don't trust any of them. Right? Subhanallah. And then Muhammad, right? And then stealing and also to teach them to control their anger, right? So all of the sins all start coming in for them to take care of, right? So at this age they're coming close to puberty, you need to be more firm on this. Of course, still no beating at all. Now, especially now that they are at the age of 9 and 10, they can rationalize and they can understand. Because what you want is you want them not to fear you. You don't want to fear from them, but you want to train them on thinking. Think for yourself. Think. How do you make life decisions? Because you're going to be an adult right now. You have to figure out things yourself without me telling you what's right and what's wrong. You have to know and choose your path. Right? So what is going on now is a lot of talking to train them on thinking. Think deep about this. Think what is halal, what is haram. Think what you want in life. So then the Shaykh goes on, and from here we're going into puberty. So then he says, فَإِنْ أَتَى وَقْتَ الْبُلُوغِ وَالصَّبِي بِهَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ خَبِيرٌ لَا غَبِي. Right, so and when the time of puberty comes, and your child, so here you're aiming at the age of 10. You're aiming to reach her by age of 10. So you have a good 1 to 5 years, depending on your child's puberty age. Right, from age of 10 or age of 9, right, if your child is not ready, 9 years old should be ready. Right, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. They have these years to train themselves up to stay away from sin. Right, the ulama say that it is harder to stay away from sin than to do a lot of sunnah deeds. And in fact, it's more virtuous to stay away from sin, right, than to do a lot of sin and do a lot of sunnah deeds. Right? It's actually more virtuous. That you do just the wajib, but you focus on staying away from sin. That makes a wali. A wali is the one that does not fall into sin. Right? So for 5 years, he's going to be focusing, maximum 5 years. Right? For most girls, 12 years old, baligh. Right? 12, baligh. Most boys, 14 or 13. Right? So at age of 9 to 12, you have 3 years. 3 years to train them on staying away from sins. 3 years. And the enormity of sins needs to be planted in their hearts. That if they do fall into sin when they are older, they know tawbah. So teach them also on the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't just keep scaring them. And in fact, I will not say to bring in the hellfire at this case, at this state. Right? But to bring in obedience and disobedience. Talk about that. Talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how you instill taqwa. So don't just keep fighting them on the hellfire. Because at this age, they might just brush it off. Hellfire. But you talk to them from a point of view of obedience and disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which path do you want to take? And where do you want to go? And how's your akhirat going to be like? Can you answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about this? Think about it yourself. Right? And then you want to talk about yourself. And don't get me involved. Right? So if you fall into sin, you know what to do. So at these ages, you're going to be teaching them about, because we're all human beings and we do sin. Teach them about tawbah, about salat tawbah, 2 raka'ats, right? About turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah forgives all sins. So make them, have hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as much as you make them be warned about sins. Right? So it's these years. So now he says, فَإِنْ أَتَى وَقْتُ الْبُلُوغِ وَالصَّبِي بِهَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ خَبِيرٌ لَا غَبِي. And when the time of puberty comes and the child, right, he is well aware of these affairs, of what is wajib on him. He's well aware of what is haram on him. Right? He's well aware of how to choose his friends. So all of what we have mentioned in this book, he knows about akhlaq, about good akhlaq, about his aqidah, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, يُعَرِّفُهُ مَقْصِدَ الْأَشْيَاءِ لِمُدَّةِ الدُّنْيَا وَلِلْأُخْرَاءِ. Right? So now that he has come to the age of puberty, you will sit down with him and you will teach him what is the point of this life. So you also have to know what is the point of life, and you have to live it. Right? So you're going to sit down with him and you are going to teach him the points and the objective of this life. Right, and that this entire dunya, right, what is the point of his whole life of his dunya for the akhirat? Teach him that. Right, so now comes the understanding of the akhirat part. You're going to implant deep in his heart the reality of the akhirah and the reality of death. And death can strike anybody at any time. Right? وَأَنَّ كُلَّ الْعَيْشِ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَوْنٌ عَلَىٰ عِبَادَةِ الرَّحْمَنِ. And that everything that Allah gives you in this life, every provision that you are given in this life, it is only meant to be used to obey and serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so all that you are given of your intellect, of your health, of your family, of your wealth, of everything in this life, all of this is just only to help you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are going to drive this deep into your child. Right? So here he says that when puberty comes, right, you need to sit your child down. Sit your child down and have a talk. Right? Talk to your child and then continue having classes with your child, with parent and child. That is the best way. And the best way to actually nurture your child, in fact we mentioned before, that once a week have a class within the family. That is when you really get to know your child. Right? Like contact time basically. And you come down, you sit down, you have a book, you talk about it. So when they go into puberty, right, the discussion is going to go more and more into the akhirah. To how do I prepare my child for the akhirah? It's all about brainwashing. So your child is either being brainwashed by the media or being brainwashed by the books and scholars. And so how is his mentality going to be? It's about mentalities in your child. Then from there, when you reason with your child about sins, it all makes sense. Right? It all makes sense to the child because now he knows the reality of this world and the next world. But slow talk, constant, weekly discussion. Right, in the family, right, about issues about this life and the next world. Right, so then he says here, right, that Muhammad. Right, so what should he know at the point of puberty? It's a revision. He must know his tawheed, his aqidah. He must know that. He must know his ibadah well. So check your child. Because at this point of puberty, you are going to test your child. Right, watch his wudu again. Watch his prayers again. Hear his Fatiha again. At-Tahiyah again. I want to hear everything out loud all over again at puberty. Because what he learned when he was 7 years old and now he's 12 years old is different. Right? He might have memorized things completely wrong at 7 years old. Right now at 12, you're going to check it again. But actually, in fact, every year you should be checking his prayers on his birthday. Right? Check to make sure that he's doing it correctly, rightly. And in fact, if your child is doing his prayers correctly and he is mumayyiz, he can be your imam. Right? And don't push him to be the imam. That makes him buck up, right? Because he has to be the imam for the family, for the mother. Right? Because he is now mumayyiz. Mumayyiz can be imam. Alright. So then he says that, and also to make sure that, and to also guard your children, right? Just to see, right, that they are firmly and attached to this path, the religion, Islam. You have to know your child. You have to know your child. That's why once a week classes is good, right? Every day, in fact, you can do it every day is better, right? Twice a week, times a week. Be in touch with your child. Like, know what they are going through, their life, who are their friends. You have to build a rapport at this point. Because they're going to go into life of puberty, right? They need guidance at this point. A lot of guidance. Right? With friends, with situations, and later on when they want to look for a spouse, they need a lot of guidance. So the parent needs to be well informed and have a very strong connection to the child. Right? Because you're going to be a guide right now. You can't force anymore. You cannot force anymore. Right? So you're going to be a guide, and you're an effective guide if you are a friend, right, to your child. And they trust your opinions, and you are somebody who is rational. Right? You don't lose your temper or lose your cool. The mother is known to be somebody who is calm and composed. So the child feels comfortable and confident to tell her anything. Right? And she will just look at it, right, and she'll give her advice about it. Right? So then they feel comfortable, right, about it. Right? And then here, Sayyidina Muhammad, so this is all things that you should know about, right? It's about the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about Rasulullah. He should know his seerah at this point. And I repeat the seerah over and over to him about Rasulullah, about the Sahaba, about the awliya, about the believers, about having good opinions of the prophets and the believers, and the awliya and the salihin, and those who are righteous and pious, right? And to have an aggrandization of everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has aggrandized, of paradise, of the hellfire, of good deeds, right? And then to stay away, right, from having any doubts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So check their aqidah. Right? Check their aqidah also, what do you understand about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do you say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how do you feel about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Talk to them about it. Right? Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you? Right? So teach them, to have a deeper relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And make sure that they are always hopeful of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are teenagers right now. They have to have gentleness, right? Hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And to have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to understand, right, that this world, right, it will go away. This world will disappear. So we do not chase this world. So if you see your child being quite dunyawi, if you see your child, like, at this point, everybody will be 13 years old, right? So they prioritize stuff, they prioritize looks, they prioritize, and it's a natural thing for teenagers, right? But just to keep them in check. Right? What is more important? The beauty of your akhlaq, the beauty of your heart is more important to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But have it as a constant, gentle speech. Right? Don't be naggy about it, right, to your child. Right? And let them make their decisions, their choices. Right? So, in like girls, they want to beautify themselves, they want to be like their friends, everything. Have discussions. Right? Don't clamp down, right? Hard fists, because they're teenagers. They're teenagers. You need to let them decide eventually what they want and what they don't want in their lives. Right? So, as the parents, not to have like completely, harshness against them, that when they become adult, they might just rebel against you. Right? But just let the decisions come from themselves. Right? They're going to decide about this, but talk to them gradually. Right? And then at this point, Imam Ghazali, he says, and when the child is brought up as how we have described, this entire poem, if he is brought up as how we have described, then teach him the secrets of this affair of this world. The secrets of this affair of this world, which is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Attachment to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? And that this entire world is just a stage for us to act upon, and Allah, right, to judge who of you are the best in deeds. That is it. Right, so at puberty, you can imagine the kind of birthday party that will be. From puberty, birthday party is going to be like a real serious situation going on. No, but can you imagine if your parents did that to you? Like sat you down and really spoke to you in a very serious way about this life, and you'll be so, what am I got into? I'm gonna go backwards into my childhood. Like, no, you're puberty now. You're in puberty now. Right? SubhanAllah, it's all written against you or for you. You choose. You choose what you want. Right? And don't take this matter lightly. Do not take this matter lightly. Inshallah, next week we'll continue. We're actually done with the parenting part. Right? He's just going to give a few more words of advice, right, on Muhammad, on the life of this world. Right? And he's going to give a few warnings, right, that if you don't follow this advice, what will happen? Right? So he actually speaks about that. Right? So if you don't follow this advice, right, then be prepared for a few types of children that can appear in front of you. Right? Don't be shocked, right, that it has happened. And then he ends off by a few more words of advice. It's a lot of advice from no one, right? Especially for us to take note. Right? And then he ends up with the poem. Right, 110 verses. We are actually at verse number 80. We are at verse number 85. It's a good 50 more verses. Right? No, 25 more verses. Right there. Okay, sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. We'll aim to finish it off by Ramadan, by end of Ramadan, inshallah. فاتحة ترزقنا منا بعمق واسمع كل حسن تعليم ودلالة على الهدى ويسر لنا كل مسلم ويسر الأرواح المعلمين ومشايخنا وتبعين ولا بيت الرواتب الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. First 10 days Allahumma arhamni ya arhamar rahimin. First 10 days of Ramadan Allahumma arhamni ya arhamar rahimin.